Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the third Political Soul Food Forum. I'm your host and moderator, Dr. Kasaun Henry, and I'm excited to present to you. Okay, so some of you might be hearing this, so let me mute my tab here. Okay, cool. So I'm excited to be here once again with an amazing group of scholars and for some of them friends. And we're engaging a question that we addressed in the second Political Soul Food Forum, and that question is, what does Black progress look like? And if you've seen the first attempt to address this question, I'm sure you remember that there were many more questions left unanswered. And so here's our next stab, an attempt to understand what it means for Black and Brown people, African American people, the diaspora from around the world, trying to make things better for themselves collectively and individually. And so let me bring in the guests. I'll have them introduce themselves on their own terms so that you can get to hear from them what they're all about, what schools and institutions they teach at, and what their scholarship is saying. And after that, I'll basically be asking them to talk about Black progress more specifically. And prior to that, I'm going to present some of the problems with discussing this kind of concept, this concept of Black progress. So let's bring in one by one on Dr. Michele Stafford. If you like, please clap out there in the ether and virtual world. We have Dr. Jonathan Lightfoot, and we have Dr. Kirk Johnson. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me in this attempt to understand issues and problems in our community and trying to figure out ways that we can make things better. So let's start off with Dr. Michele Stafford. Please tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what's your scholarship on, and what kind of work you do.
Absolutely. So, thank you for inviting me to this forum. I'm always excited to talk about us, our community, and is absolutely ready to promote everything that we do. And the educator in me has a little slideshow for you guys. So, I'm going to just pull that up. So, give me 1 second. Okay, just let me know that you guys can see everything.
Okay, you ready?
Yep, I'm all set.
Okay, here we go.
Let me know when you're all set.
I'm all set.
Awesome. So, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Michele Stafford. I'm from Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, do or die. I received my bachelor's in psychology from Cheney University, graduating in 2009. I received my master's of public administration from Alfred University, graduating in 2013 with the focus on public policy and administration. I received my doctorate in 2019 from Walden University. Public policy and administration with a sub concentration in leadership and management. I'm a soror. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So for all my sorors out there, what's up? I'm also the owner and chief operating of Always Troubleshooting. So my business is centered on building up the community, helping us connecting our people or anyone with a job essentially, and also operations planning. So I look at uh, bringing relationships together, connecting people with opportunities, and also exactly what it is, troubleshooting. I'm also the executive director of the Office of Constituent Grievance Services at the New York City Department of Correction. Essentially, my office, we handle all of the internal and external complaints. So as you know, there's never a dull moment. Again, kind of tying in my troubleshooter side. I'm also an adjunct professor at John Jay College, where this will be my second year, uh, focusing on law enforcement literature. I love being a professor. First, I'm proud to say that a majority of my students are Black and Brown. And so it gives me great joy to know that I am helping to shape the minds of the world. I always tell my students, if you don't remember anything, I need you to think. I need you to think critically because you are the ones that are going to be making the changes. So it gives me great joy. And just some little things, some personal things about me. I'm a lover of kindness, the arts, and traveling, and always rooting for everything and everyone Black. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. and thanks for this wonderful presentation. And we're gonna bring in Dr. Jonathan Lightfoot. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your scholarship, what you do?
Sure. I'm a professor at Hofstra University. And by the way, thank you, Dr. Henry. Your energy and enthusiasm for illuminating Black life and culture is infectious. So keep up the good work. And I'm glad to be on a panel with Dr. Johnson and Dr. Stafford. So I'm a professor in teaching, learning, and technology at Hofstra University, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. So I've received my PhD in policy studies from the University of Illinois at Chicago, a master's degree from Harvard University's Graduate School of Education, and a bachelor's degree in economics from Cornell University. So I've been at Hofstra about 18 years now, and I'm in the inaugural director, founding director of Hofstra's Center for Race, Culture, and Social Justice. And my work outside of the academy includes public speaking, conducting research, and leading professional development workshops for K-12 administrators, teachers, and staff on intersectional identity construction, cross-cultural communication, and anti-racist school leadership preparation. Some of the courses I teach are The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, a contemporary look at the modern American civil rights movement, Children of Color, the social construction of race in American education. I'm a social and cultural foundations of education professor, which means that I attempt to critically connect what's going on with schools and society. So I do history, philosophy, sociology, and the politics of education, and sometimes the legal connection. So my research agenda is anti-racist, anti-oppression education and schooling. I do school desegregation, legal and public policy. I've recently pivoted to take up an interest in the impact of colorism on academic achievement. And that's what I've been doing today. I'm at a conference on colorism today and tomorrow. And it's been quite enlightening. And particularly, I'm interested in how colorism affects academic achievement and how racial identity informs adolescent mental health. So do a lot of stuff like that. I like to have fun. I'm the person who goes to family functions and I play with all the kids and roll around on the floor with them. So that's my personal.
I love it.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. I mean, for those of you out there, you can already hear that we're going to have a great time. And now we're going to put the cherry on top of the cake. We're going to bring in Dr. Kirk Johnson. Please tell us what you're all about, your scholarship, and your interest.
Hey, what's up, my people? Everyone can hear me?
Absolutely. There's a little feedback on your end.
Okay, just to make sure. So, what's up, everyone? I am Reverend Dr. Kirk Johnson, but I'll try to be putting on my.
Okay, 1 second, Dr. Johnson. There is a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure if anyone else is hearing that. It seems like it's sort of breaking up.
Okay. Is this better?
Let's see. Yeah, sounds better from there. Just want to make sure.
Okay, Dr. Stafford, Dr. Lightfoot, it sounds good on your end?
Yes, I hear it.
Okay,
okay.
Good. All right.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So again, my name is Reverend Dr. Kirk Johnson. I am Assistant Professor of Justice Studies and Medical Humanities at Montclair State University. I graduated from Seton Hall University with my bachelor's in religious studies, Drew Theological School with my master's in divinity, and Drew University, just like my friend and colleague, Dr. Kasaun Henry, who recently received his PhD. So congratulations again to you, my brother. I know it's been a journey.
Thank you.
From Drew University, graduates, Casperson Graduate School of Studies. Pastor,
okay, we're getting some breakup again.
Some more breakup? Okay.
Okay. Yeah. We got a little bit more breaking up.
Yeah, there's a slight delay too in your voice. I see your lips moving and then I don't hear your sound till after.
Okay. So let me do this here.
Yeah, just take your time. This is,
there's a lot of static. Technology. So let me try to remove my mic. Maybe that's the reason. So give me 1 second here.
Take your time. And while Dr. Kirk Johnson is doing that, some of you may have heard or not, we attended Drew together. We engaged in a lot of roundtables, and I don't want to spoil all the fun and surprises, but he's a phenomenal scholar and activist. So let me know when you're ready, Dr. Johnson, to jump in.
All right. Is this better?
Yeah, perfect.
Great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So I guess the microphone this time actually was the problem, ironically. So I do apologize for our listeners out there. So I'll repeat myself in case you miss anything. So once again, I'm Reverend Dr. Kirk Johnson. I'm assistant professor of justice studies and medical humanities at Mount State University. I received my bachelor's in religious studies from Seton Hall University, my master's in divinity from Jew Theological School, and as my friend and colleague, Dr. Kasaun Henry, who recently received his PhD from the same graduate school from Jew University, Kasaun School of Graduate Studies, where I received my doctorate in medical humanities. I'm also pastor of Christ Congregation in Princeton, New Jersey, and I'm part of a array of different things, but I'll share just three. So I'm a member of the American Society for Bioethics and Humanities. I've been a member for almost 12 years, around the same time being a member of the Bioethics Committee at Atlantic Health Systems, one of the major healthcare providers in New Jersey. Also co-host of Bioethics in the Margins podcast. So we talk a lot about health inequities and a lot of other issues within medicine that isn't talked about. So if you're a big podcaster and like to listen to us, I'm co-host along with my colleague R-Wise, who is part of the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, one of the top medical institutions. And again, the podcast is called Bioethics in the Margins. So please download. We talk about racism, sexism, and many other isms within the medical care system with amazing people from around the world. And lastly, I am the founder and CEO of Peculiar Capital, which is an education consulting company where we go in and do workshops and trainings regarding various aspects of education, but also, of course, with my background, theology, spirituality, as well as healthcare. So it's great to be on with Dr. Lightfoot and Dr. Stafford, and I'm really excited in our engaging conversation for this evening.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, Dr. Johnson. So, Dr. Johnson, you might have to do some mic troubleshooting because it returns. The sound returned. I don't know why when you're not giving your presentation, it sounds good. I think something out here is player hating on you. You know what I'm saying? This brother going to bring some juice. Technology is like, nah, man, we ain't trying to hear it today. So
positive energy over here.
No doubt. This is what happened. This is what happened when the revolution is televised, you know. So, but yeah. So thanks a lot, all three of you. I'm really excited. I'm bubbling with so much to say, and so bear with me, everyone. So let me just jump into this. I won't be long-winded. I do have tons of paragraphs of our introduction, but I'm going to shorten it to a few statements here from something that I printed out and shared before. So the key thing here that we're discussing is this question: what does Black progress look like? And doing what I do as an intellectual historian, I unpack ideas and concepts, propositions, and stuff like that. And in this phrase here, there are two major concepts that are problematic. One is the notion of progress. You know, what does it mean for something to be progressive? Is it something going from point A to point B? Is it linear, or is it a transformation? And it matters to many groups who quantify the quality of their lives. And then the next sort of, I think I would call a puddle of quicksand, would be the notion of Black. What does it mean to be Black? I mean, there's a lot of arguments among people about, you know, who is really Black. For example, President Barack Obama, because his cultural upbringing didn't really fit at the center of the prototypical Black experience bell curve, created political mistrust for some people. But then we look at someone, let's say, as Clarence Thomas, where, you know, that's someone who's, you know, who got the melanin and everything else, grew up in a Black family. However, his politics doesn't fit at the center of the bell curve of Black America, right? And so there are these, but he's authentically Black in so many ways for some, and for himself maybe. So I wanted to bring this out because when we talk about, somebody's being black and somebody or the black community is making progress, this could be received in so many different ways. And I just want to throw that out there, not just to the panel, but also to people listening in. So that way, when we're listening to someone saying, well, this is what black people should do, it's like, okay, really? Maybe the Nation of Islam, for example, says, this is what we should do as black people. And people might co-sign right up until it requires some sort of religious affiliation or belief system, or vice versa from a Christian point of view or from a black secular point of view. So that's why I find this topic very, very important. I mean, even, I'm assuming that we're probably all on the same side of things, generally speaking, but there may be nuances, for all of us collectively here on the panel and those listening. So I'm interested to see how this unfolds among you all, and also preparing you to see how I might come with some questions on what you propose as being an example of black progress, and and then a prescription of what we should do to create black progress. And I guess I'll stop here because I think you get the point. But I think I want to add 1 or 2 more points here. There's a relatively unknown pop singer or neo soul singer named Kevin Michael, and I love this guy. And he was out around 2007, and I mentioned this to the last panel. And he wrote a song called "We All Want the Same Thing." All my gangster friends and all my skater friends, we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. DJs in the clubs, Jesus freaks and thugs, we all want the same thing. All my ex-girlfriends and all their new boyfriends, they all want the same thing. They all want the same thing. From Wall Street to the hood, New York and Hollywood, we all want the same thing. So I'm wondering, when we talk about black progress and the question itself, does it mean that one thing that all black people could possibly want, regardless of their racial backgrounds, if they're biracial, multiracial, or their cultural backgrounds, whether they're born in the South, in the North, the East, or the West, or on the islands in the Caribbean? Is there one thing that all black people want, that defines black progress? And I will throw in here, and I'll end it on this note. Mary J. Blige in her song said in 1994, in her single, "All I want to be is to be happy." And so is black progress something that brings forth happiness for black people? And these are things that I'm wrestling with, and I'm just throwing it out there for those of you who are listening to have as a sounding board to what we will hear now. So without any delay, I will go in the order of the flyer, and so that way it's arbitrary. We'll start with Dr. Jonathan Lightfoot to talk to us about what does black progress look like to you, and according to your understanding and your deep research and engagement with the black community intellectually and hands-on as an activist. So the floor is now Dr. Jonathan Lightfoot.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm not going to quote any hip hop lyrics or any other R&B songs that I'm fond of. But when I look at black progress, I think about the Sankofa bird. Are we familiar with the Sankofa bird?
Yeah.
That's I don't have any visuals either for you to see it. So imagine with me the Sankofa bird for those who know what that is. So the Sankofa bird's feet are situated and firm foundation on the ground, but they're facing forward. But the head of the bird is turned back, looking back, and it has almost a ball in its mouth. So it's something that I'm looking at, and I want you to run with me on this about the power of Sankofa is to know your history. I think if we would reflect and to make sure that we understand our history, that as William Shakespeare said, what's past is prologue. It will provide a map for us moving forward. And the past luminaries who have made great contributions to Black life and culture and progress and so forth, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think as the Sankofa bird suggests, we just need to reach back and get what's behind us so that we can make sure that it's not lost to us. So just a bit about the African word from the Akan tribe in Ghana. The literal translation of the word Sankofa is a symbol. It's not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. So San, return, Ko, to go, and Fa, to look, seek, and take. So Sankofa symbolizes the people's quest for knowledge among the Akan, with the implication that the quest is based on critical examination and intelligent and patient investigation. So the symbol is based on a mythical bird with its feet firmly planted forward and his head turned backwards. So the past serves as a guide for planning our future. To the Akan, it is the wisdom in learning from the past which ensures a strong future. So we must believe that movement and new learning as time passes. So as we march forward, we get the knowledge of the past and make sure that we don't forget it. So Black progress should be rooted in the wisdom of the past. Our Black luminaries did this. So I want to do a roll call, if you will, with our past luminaries. So today, August 17th, is Marcus Garvey's 136th birthday. He was born in 1887. His legacy was built on Black pride, Black beauty, Black dignity, Black self-determination, and Black independence from white supremacy. He established his Back to Africa movement back in the teens, 19-teens. He had gone to South America, he'd gone to Europe, and every place he went, he saw that Black people were at the bottom. Black people were being left behind. So he established this Back to Africa movement, and it was derailed by a conspiracy to attack his character, steal his freedom, and he had a penchant for speaking unfiltered truth to power. So his brand of Black nationalism had three components: unity among Black diaspora, African diaspora, pride in African cultural heritage, and complete autonomy. So he believed that people of African descent could establish a great independent nation in their ancient homeland of Africa. So the Black Star Line was his ship. He established the Universal Negro Improvement Association. He also had a great publication, which was probably had the largest circulation back in the 1920s. So all of these, I think, achievements, the Negro World was the newspaper, by the way, I think makes us have to recognize, what he does. He's the one who established the Black, red, and green flag for Black people, universal. So that was also great. But one thing that was interesting, I thought, in the light of this conference I was telling about, this colorism conference, he was a dark-skinned Black man from Jamaica. And he had beef with W.B. Du Bois, or W.B. Du Bois had beef with him. And they would go at it, starting off all right, but then they, parted ways and they started attacking each other in public, Black men attacking Black men, in the public sphere, which is, conversation for another day. But he accused him of light skin privilege, and using his light skin privilege and his, what he thought was the maybe milk toast organization, NAACP, as having too much white influence, and having pretty much everybody who was light, bright, almost white, being in positions of influence and authority and power in America and elsewhere. And so they would attack each other, and W.B. Du Bois would use those stereotypical tropes, associating Blackness with ugliness, with ignorance, and so forth. So that was not a good thing. But when I think about, how we as Black people, and if we're gonna progress, you ask another question: do we air our dirty laundry? Is that something that does not hinder us as far as our progress is concerned? But I still, think that, this whole beef they had that was steeped in colorism is something that we still deal with today, something that we have to deal with today. So I'm going to run through a couple of people, actually several people. I just want to mention briefly and what their contribution was and how we as today in crafting, let's say, a Black progress agenda, how we can benefit from those who came before us. So Dr. Kenneth and Mamie Clark were psychologists who are famous for the doll study. And if you don't know the doll study, you should learn what the doll study was about, where these young preschool age children, basically from ages 3 to 6, they conducted an experiment. So, and that experiment was used to study the psychological effects of segregation on these Black children. So they had 4 dolls, identical dolls, except for the color of their skin. And they test the racial perception. So the results showed that the majority of Black children preferred white dolls to Black dolls. And the children would say the Black dolls were bad and the white dolls were pretty, the white dolls were smart. And so this proved that segregation gave Black children a sense of inferiority. And it was the first time that Supreme Court used this research to determined that school segregation was conferring a badge of inferiority onto Black children, which ultimately ended up with a unanimous Supreme Court to end school desegregation in 1954. Imagine a Supreme Court that had a unanimous decision that favored Blacks. Today, I don't think that would happen. We got a very skewed court. We wouldn't get a unanimous decision like we had. Martin Luther King, can't go without mentioning him. This month is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, where he delivered that famous "I Have a Dream" speech. But people get stuck there with the "I Have a Dream" speech. But he actually became more radicalized as time went on. By the time 1967 came around, he was repeatedly condemning the triple evils of racism, militarism, and poverty. And so it was then, I think that, he was pretty much marked for death. Because he was not the Black person that the elite and those who in power thought was, as a person who would play respectability politics, which is looking for white approval for what you say and do and how you carry out the civil rights movement. Malcolm X, he taught us also Black pride, similar to Marcus Garvey. And I think a good quote I remember from a speech, who taught you to hate yourself? They say he taught you to hate the texture of your hair, the color of your skin. Who taught you to bleach your skin and to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to, so much so that you don't want to be around each other? Again, we can look back and see what's happening today and question what kind of progress we made. Mary McLeod Bethune, she was a champion of higher education. She started college and university in Florida. Frederick Douglass, he was also a freedom fighter. And what stands out to me with him was his whole idea of, what to the slave is the 4th of July. We just celebrated Juneteenth a few months ago, and President Biden a few years ago just declared that Juneteenth was a federal holiday, a national holiday. But we have to think: do we celebrate the 4th of July? Do we celebrate Juneteenth? Is that progress? Again, those are probably more questions I'm raising than I'm answering. Carter G. Woodson, one of my favorite as a historian. He devoted his whole life to Black history, and he established Black History Week, which later became Black History Month. And this work that I tend to share with my students most is this 1933 classic of Miseducation of the Negro. And he asked this poignant question: why should you, as Black people, send your most precious assets, your children, to the white oppressor to be educated? They return to you miseducated and self-hating, which again is a problem. I think that, as far as the luminaries we have to consider, our athletes and our artists, our musicians, the jazz, blues, R&B, soul, hip hop, which is the 50th anniversary this year. And think about, they too look to the past as a blueprint for contemporary and making things forward looking and keeping it fresh. That's where sampling comes in, I think. They realized the wealth and the greatness of those sounds and those beats that came before them, and they reached back as Sankofa and brought it back to the fore and made it new again. Milana Karanga, the founder of the principles of Kwanzaa, Umoja, strive for maintaining unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Kuji Kajalia, self-determination. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. Ujama, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose. Kuamba, creativity. Imani, faith. Again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel if we just go back to what has come before us and use it for our benefit as we move forward. Last few here, George Washington Carver developed over 300 products from peanuts and over 118 from the sweet potato. He also used new products or made new products from waste material, including recycled oil and paints and so forth, and stains made from clay. These are, again, the ones who have come before us that we need to reach back and make sure that the wisdom and the contributions that they made to us to move us forward to what they call uplift the race is not lost. Personally, I'm into Black health. So I'm into Black people being very mindful of their physical health, their mental health, their spiritual health. I think we need to eat better. We need to get off a slave diet. We need to, get off of fast food and processed food and grow urban gardens and cut down the steps in between, taking the food from its source, the ground, the tree, the bush, to our plate, and that would be healthier for it. We need to destigmatize mental health counseling and therapy. I think, as formerly enslaved people who continue to suffer from the vestiges of slavery, as Dr. Joy DeGruy says, that we never got our therapy. And that is the response, the accepted collective response to someone who's been traumatized, or a group of people who've been traumatized. And spiritually, I think we need to work on our spiritual health. We need to reconnect with the divine, the God force, the I am, the creator. We need to have some form of connection and centering, meditation, yoga, whatever it is that's going to calm and center you and make sure that you don't get caught up, in things that don't benefit you as far as your spiritual health, your mental health, and so forth. Lastly, I would say is that comprehensive reparations is needed. You need to address the political, social, economic, educational, healthcare inequality, and reparations is something that needs to happen. Many local jurisdictions are beginning to issue reparations, even in the form of cash payments. Evanston, Illinois is one of them. They're getting $25,000 payments now. I had a brother who was born in Evanston, Illinois. I'm from Chicago, by the way. And if you were born between 1919 and 1969 or lived in Evanston, Illinois from 1919 to 1969, that 50-year period, you're eligible for $25,000 of reparations. Again, I think it should be more than just a check. I need to be structural and comprehensive. And lastly, I'm going to share with you what I shared with audience at the Obama conference when I met Dr. Kasaun Henry. So, and it is this: we are in need of a major reconstruction, a third reconstruction, if you will. And this is America's struggle for racial justice in the 21st century. So this is the work of distinguished historian Pino Joseph, and he argues that it's time for the new struggle for the first-class citizenship and dignity of Black America, more powerful than those that arose after the Civil War, that first Reconstruction, and during the Civil Rights era, what he calls the second Reconstruction. He offers revealing connections about the insights across centuries as he traces the third Reconstruction from the election of Barack Obama to the rise of Black Lives Matter to the failed assault on the Capitol, which is January 6th now, that former fake president is being held accountable for now with all these indictments that are hitting him. So America's first and second Reconstruction failed tragically short of the grand aim. So a third Reconstruction, he says, can revive the hope, the kind of hope that leads to real progressive change. So Black progress for me is comprehensive, it is holistic, and it allows us to go inward to kind of make the kind of changes that we need to make for ourselves and stop depending on our oppressor to make the change for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was awesome. That was have a lot of notes and a lot of questions for you. And what I'm going to do is wait and get everybody to put their ingredient in this delicious soup. Yeah, that's awesome. So let's go to Dr. Kirk Johnson. And the same is for you, Dr. Kirk Johnson. What does Black progress look like? How do you frame the issue or the question? And do you have steps that you would prescribe or suggest? Please take the floor. We're going to go to Dr. Kirk Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. And hopefully there's no feedback. I do apologize regarding my Wi-Fi here. So Dr. Lightfoot did a plethora of different examples of Black progress, and kind of like the talk about reparations. It could mean so many different things in so many ways within society. So I like to actually talk about a topic that I think from the educational standpoint, I think will be beneficial, since Black history always has been challenged ever since the get-go, but even more so, more brashly in southern states, like, of course, infamously Governor Ron DeSantis, or some people call Ron DeSatan, in Florida, just completely censoring Black history. And of course, this is not the first time of censorship. So I think really embracing and emphasizing critical race theory, and of course, critical race theory, for those that don't know, it's not something you teach in K through 12 education. It's more at the echelons of law school. But having the foundational pieces of that to really teach a transparent history, talking about the good, the bad, as well as the ugly as well. So, and thank you, Jones Murphy. The sound is much better. Great. I'm happy to hear that. So for those that don't know what critical race theory is, it was really a particular conception conceived by legal scholars in the 1970s. So we know the triumphs of the 1950s and the 1960s in the early, or basically in the mid 20th century. But scholars like Derek Bell, credited the founder of critical race theory, Kimberly Crenshaw, also Richard Delgado, and many others. But these are some of the main pillars of this particular theory. Critical race theory was established as a way to understand how race and racism are foundational to law and policy in the United States. So when we talk about systemic racism, well, how is it systemic? It's through the laws and policies, as well as, of course, the social norms, quote unquote, within society. So evidence for this abounds, and such as the history of how voting rights have been tied to race, legalized school segregation, which we still see today. New Jersey is actually the 6th most segregated state regarding our schools in the nation. Also, how federal redlining in Black neighborhoods created intergenerational racial disparities in home ownership, but also intergenerational wealth gaps as well, because the majority of the time you own your equity in owning your own home. If you rent, your landlord gains in that particular equity, but yourself as the rentor, or the rentee rather, does not gain equity. And this has been since the Federal Housing Administration was developed, where they had billions upon billions of dollars of money set aside for veterans, particularly white veterans, and completely ostracize Black, brown, and also Asian communities as well, for the most part, in federal housing. Also, recently, without much public understanding of what critical race theory is, even until this day, critical race theory has been accused of being a political project, right? That villainizes white children and creates discord. And that's even now. I think critical race theory now has been used as the term woke. And woke has been politicized as a way of something negative, right? So that is another thing that I think we need to address within the education sphere when we talk about curriculum, when we talk about inclusive curriculum, and literally talking about the good, the bad, and ugly within history. So as a result of this, those who oppose critical race theory express that talking about race and racism in the U.S. school system is divisive, whereas others believe that schools should teach U.S. history truthfully, like us, right? Transparently, and yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but our history is uncomfortable. And we ought to recognize the ongoing salience of race and racism, right? So we really need to address the controversy, quote unquote, right? Supposed controversy around critical race theory, but more broadly around white comfort, right? Because that's what it all boils down to: white comfort, right? Or white fragility, as Robin DiAngelo, the New York Times bestselling author, with her book. We really have to address that, because in order for us to have real progress and to really alleviate ignorance, because that's what it is, one of the foundational pieces of the maintenance of racism is ignorance, right? If you're ignorant about something, then of course you have the benefit of not correcting it. But if you actually are taught the truth, you have no choice but to grapple with the truth. And even now, our American society has ignored, not even acknowledged, racism, and acknowledged the monstrosities done to Black individuals, right? There's been acknowledgement for all other particular racial groups, but yet in 2023, there's still no acknowledgement of the the magnitude, right? The masses of evils, of sins done towards Black people, right? So I think progress has to really alleviate, or at least start acknowledging, okay, we're being ignorant of what's going on and what we're going to do about it within our school systems, right? So that the perpetuation of ignorance, right, won't be continued from generation to generation. So that is one particular piece, I think, regarding the education system. Progress only could be made through, of course, the dynamics of education foundationally, I think. The second piece, and Dr. Lightfoot alluded to this earlier, and since this is my space, is through healthcare, right? And part of the reason why Black folks are still sick disproportionately compared to other racial groups is because of ignorance, right? It's because of not educating ourselves about the importance of nutrition, the importance of course, making sure that you have health insurance, right, which is readily available for everyone thanks to Affordable Care Act, right? And through government subsidized monies, each and every one of us, no matter how much you make, can gain health insurance. And that was a huge game changer. And quantifiably speaking, when you look at different studies from Black health since the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, which is the same thing, has come into play, Black health has improved. Now, of course, it's not like 100%, or thousands and thousands of percent of improvement. We still have a long ways to go, but at least we have a foundational aspect of, if we're sick, we won't go into debt going to the doctor, right? Or wait until things are so bad, like our forebears did, like our ancestors did when there was segregation and we didn't have access to doctors. The only doctor we had access to was the emergency room, right? But yet we still have some of us still having that particular mentality. Oh, I'll go. But then when something happens and really that disease or that illness has progressed to a point where you go to the emergency room, unfortunately, it's too late. That illness has progressed so much, it's in its final stages. So advocating for health education and health literacy under nutrition, under healthcare, under, of course, the spirituality aspect as well, mind, body, and spirit, whether you're Christian, Muslim, wherever you are in the spectrum of religion and spirituality, that you also take care of your mind, which is an education piece, your physical body, which is, of course, the healthcare piece, but also your spirit, right? And that is another dynamic, I think, that is also really prevalent towards Black progress as well. So it's a more holistic approach, I think. So I could go on, but I want to stop there just to share some of my thoughts, but also some of the responses that Dr. Lightfoot foundationally raised in our conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Kirk Johnson. Appreciate that. Very insightful. Got a page full of notes and dozens of questions. So I'm going to let these things simmer for a while we take in more nutritional thought and reflection from Dr. Michele Stafford. Likewise, I pose the same question and issue to frame. What does Black progress look like to you, Dr. Michele Stafford? How do you frame this question or problem, and what suggestions do you have or insights do you have on that question based on your research, scholarship, and activism? I think your mic is muted, so hold on. Yep, there we go.
Awesome. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. That was my
great. Okay. So Dr. Johnson, Dr. Lightfoot, thank you. Just such important and meaningful items that contribute to this conversation and moving us Black people forward. I do want to say that these are my views on Black progress and does not represent any employment with John Jay or New York City Department of Correction or with the sorority. So these are my personal views. And so as earlier, I have a slide that I want to kind of you guys to follow me in this discussion. So 1 second. So awesome. So what does Black progress look like? And these are my thoughts. So it ties into the past, right? And I think we've all kind of grown up with exactly what Dr. Lightfoot was saying. You have to kind of know your past, understand your past, to understand where you're going. And when I think about the past, I think about all of the massacres that have happened, but documented and undocumented. And these massacres happened in our community because we were thriving, because we were creating wealth for ourselves, creating systems for ourselves, schools, health care. We were supporting one another. And it was because of the envy and the jealousy and just the lack of and just discrimination where massacres occurred. And it ties into proprietorship, right? Owning businesses, owning property. And that is like the real wealth. And that is what helps to advance us forward as one. And so I think that when I think about progress, it's observing the past and also proprietorship. It's owning property, owning businesses to have some kind of foundational status and wealth to keep moving forward. So the next one, so R, progress, role. We as African Americans have played a significant role. And again, Dr. Lightfoot touched on this. We've contributed to American society in ways where we have not been repaid, like our reparations. I mean, here are a list of Black inventors dating back to the 1800s where have really put America on the map today. And so when I think about the role and the progress and what that looks like for us is acknowledging and continuing to put our history in the front row, kind of going back to like the educational realm where Dr. Johnson spoke strongly on making sure that we're represented in academia. Our history is heard, our history is accurate and being taught. And then the next thing, so progress, right? What's next? So oneness and being organized. And so when I think about oneness, I think about being organized. I think about the Black Panther Party, and they were against police brutality. And I feel like America really highlighted that. But what we know is they were very, very, very focused on Black progress, right? They were focused on social change for the Black community. There were programs in place to feed our children, to teach our children, to provide safety. And for lack of better words, also mental support, even though we weren't calling that, for the Black community. It was for us, by us, everything with us. And so those are some of the things for me that what progress looks like in the Black community. Also, when I think about oneness and organization, what roles are we playing in politics? What roles are we playing in corporations? What roles are we playing in academia to help one another, to open up doors, to turn around and pull someone forward so that they can continue to keep moving? And so to me, progress embodies all of that. Globally. So we're all here. We're right now all currently in New York State, but there are other states, there are other countries. And so how are we connecting with other brown and Black people across the world to be united, to grow economically, to share history, and to preserve it? And so for me, I think that having a global connection and continuing to move the dial and honing in on our history and keeping our history fresh, and not just in one state or in our communities or in our churches, will help to move the dial, to move us in the correct direction. In other words, the Black progress of us. And respect. And so a lot has happened to us. Right, just as a people, we can go back to slavery, where there was just nothing but disrespect. And then over time, respect and disrespect has evolved in a particular way that hasn't necessarily allowed us to progress in the right direction. But in order for us to progress, it's respecting our past, respecting our culture, respecting who we are, respecting our family structure, respecting our elders, those who were here before us, and understanding that the knowledge that they have can continue to push us forward. I mean, people often talk about our young boys and how disrespectful they are. Quite frankly, that's not all about our boys, right? I think that's a small number. And our boys, they love their mothers, they love their grandmothers. Most of them are grandmas, babies. And so the respect that they have for their elders, for their communities, for their families, is another platform to keep pushing us towards progress. Economic. I mean, we saw this in the civil rights. The civil rights made a change when we stopped putting our money into the system, right? The boycott. So when I think about progress, you just can't not talk about wealth or economics or money. It has to happen. And so it's important to note that 84% of white Americans are wealthy, right? And a lot of it stems from generational wealth, while Black Americans make up only 13%. And so there's a huge gap. That is a huge gap where we're still fighting for our reparations. We're fighting for that wealth and that growth. But we need to sustain it. And so now we need to talk about the dollar, the Black dollar. We need to circulate the Black dollar continuously in our Black communities, similar to the Jewish community. Their dollar goes throughout their community. Our dollar is the fastest. It leaves our community the fastest. And so by using our dollar in our community, it will help for us to sustain our wealth, sustain us as a people, and to help us to progress forward. So safety, right? We're on the first S in progress. And so we are under attack, right? There's no question about it. We're clear that we're under attack, and we're fighting literally to just stay alive. We're fighting to walk down the block. We're fighting to get on a train. We're fighting to get on a bus. We're fighting to have a seat at the table. So I believe that we have to create our own safe space. We have to create our own seats at the table. We have to continuously create opportunities for our children, for our young adults, and for our elders to be able to give us the knowledge, to reinforce the knowledge, and to help carry us in whatever way that is. And so, whatever that safety looks like mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, it has to happen. And so, progress has to be rooting in feeling safe. And then the final S is sustaining. We have to be able to sustain all of these different items that I've talked about in order for us to progress. And it takes consistency. It takes oneness. It takes us being organized. It takes us using our dollar in our communities to say, this is what we stand for. We know where we've come. We know what our ancestors have done. Our ancestors have done it. We can do it too. We just need to remain consistent and be present at all times. And so, if I have to say, what is my takeaway when I think about what does Black progress look like? It's boycotting accordingly, right? Because money, we need the money to create the opportunities, to sustain opportunities, and Black progress should be more about less conversation and more action. We should be strategically utilizing our resources to circulate the Black dollar in our community, creating and fostering generational wealth while creating a safe space for our youth and opportunities where we as a people can thrive. So that's what I have on what Black progress looks like for me.
Wow, this is wonderful. Wow, this was a marvelous and comprehensive presentation in response to the question of Black progress. A lot of practical points there, and that gives us a good balance. We have much of the sort of theoretical and historical and the social and political, and you've given a lot of actionable steps. So I would like to ask a few questions to each of you, and I'm going to go in the same order you all presented in. And this will be a good time for all of you who are listening to, if you have any questions, please feel free to state them in the chat, and hopefully the panel will get to them. So I want to go to Dr. Lightfoot, and so your approach to this was, in a sense, and correct me at any point if I'm off on this, to give us an understanding of Black progress as a process of enlightenment by reflecting on our history, or perhaps our legacy, or even taking inventory of our intellectual and cultural inheritances from our ancestors, intellectual and activist ancestors who provided clues and knowledge and wisdom to, or even a map out of what Malcolm X would probably call this American hell. And you pinpointed different intellectuals and examples of the enlightened ones, so to speak, as in the Buddhist tradition, the enlightened one, Buddha, is sort of reincarnated in a sense, right? And so we get these reincarnations of Black, angels in a sense, from Marcus Garvey, Kenneth Clark, MLK, Malcolm X, and so on. And so I have a couple of questions. If we think of each of these legendary individuals, Black women, men and women, and we can honor their contributions and knowledge to us, from a distance. But if we zoom into some of their very specific blueprints, we might see some conflict of interest in there. And I want to know, like, what's your takeaway? How do you reconcile things? Reconcile things. For example, Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was encouraging us to form a Black America somewhere else. Let's go back to Africa, basically, right? Literally, not just in the sense of Malcolm X's, which would have been more, in many ways, spiritual and cultural. Malcolm X seemed to have been prepared for sort of a Black colony here in America, living separate or living independently from the larger American society. But Marcus Garvey was saying, no, let's pack up and let's go. You mentioned MLK and Frederick Douglass. These are some individuals who are willing to stay So what Black progress look like when we try to bring these different voices together, right? Let's see here. And for example, Karenga would encourage us to hearken to the principles of Kwanzaa, and cloak ourselves with the garments and images and symbols of African culture, right? Whereas Frederick Douglass perhaps seemed to have been more of a multicultural in the sense that he wasn't really saying we need to get back to Africa. We need to fix America along with King. And as you can see, I'm finding these little different threads. Now they're all, I admit, are looking for ways to improve Blacks' position and well-being. But specifically, if you look at them with the microscope, they have very particular directions and directives for us. What is your take on that? And let me open up your mic.
But they're all right. Nobody's wrong. So, yeah, I mean, we all, from 360 degrees, seeing the same thing from a different angle and different perspective. So, and when I say look back and retrieve, what came before us, I mean, you're trying to receive or retrieve the nuggets, of their wisdom that they have, in essence, laid a blueprint and a map for us to follow. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. They were suffering under oppression just like we suffer under oppression today. 100 years later, 200 years later, 300 years later, and they had tools to survive. They had tools that they used to stay alive, to appease those who had their foot on their neck. And I think that it's wise of us today to study those methods, study those tools that they use, and whatever we can use. I think that we should do so. And Marcus Garvey, yeah, he wanted us to go back to Africa, I think, but primarily he wanted us to reclaim Africa, as our homeland. So if the Irish had Ireland, and if the Scottish had Scotland, and the Chinese had China, what do we have? We know where we came from, and he wanted us to reclaim it. He wanted us to open up trade. He wanted us to communicate. He wanted us to go back and forth, if you will. So I don't think he just necessarily wanted us to just all pack up and leave. I think he wanted us to have options. Some people come from the old country, so to speak, don't necessarily go back, but they can if they want to. It's not a problem. But the great resources of Africa, should be available to us, and we should know and have a relationship. Everybody who's of African descent around the world should know something. Right? I think these 23andMe, Ancestry.com, we're finding out that we're 51% Nigerian and 20% Ghanaian. We're rediscovering through technology and science and DNA who we are, and I think it's reawakening people to to discover and to think of possibilities of not only survival but to thrive and to grow and to accomplish things above and beyond what we could have thought possible, and so I think that we're trying to find ways to love each other and to fall in love with ourselves again, if we ever did at any time. Love ourselves, love our people, love our land. That that's what the red, black, and green was all about. To really bring us together under a banner of the greatness of who we are. Everybody exploits us. Everybody wants our dances. Everybody wants our music. Everybody wants us, but they don't want our pain. So we need to claim our greatness and understand that if a people are going to be sustained, if you will, Dr. Stafford, or going to be spiritual, Dr. Johnson, land is the thing, and I think Africa, I think awaits us. I think they need our help. We think about black dollars. We're really in a position of privilege when it comes to the so-called Black American economy or Black in America economy. We spend a lot of money on stuff. Like I said, fast food. We spend all our money on Indian hair. We spend our money on nails and a lot of stuff. We got a lot of dollars out there, that rival some, developing countries, go way beyond. And so I think we need to reprioritize, how we spending our money. And we can not only uplift, blacks who built this country, but the blacks who in other parts of the world who lost their children in the oceans through the Atlantic slave trade, and who are being trafficked and suffer from colonialism and imperialism and capitalism, really. So I think this position of privilege, relatively speaking, we could I think reclaim and save a lot of folks who are dying, and I think it's up to us to do so because of our nexus to power and privilege, from whiteness and money and power.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to respond to that, and with another question. I want to engage this a little bit more. So what I gather, some key points that came out, and you sort of quenched my thirst on this issue with two phrases you made: options and unity and love ourselves. And so I
love each other and ourselves.
Right. So with that in mind, you had mentioned, I'm listening to every little thing you say, right? So you mentioned wills. We don't have to reinvent the will. And I had just wrote as a reaction, well, there are various wills. And so which wills are we reinventing in a sense? Some might look at one or another of the legendary Black activists and intellectuals that you mentioned. And so it seems to me maybe what you're saying is we should hearken to the past for a collective inspiration
and guidance.
And I wonder, how do we solve the issue of unity when you have a Garveyite camp, right? Let's take a contemporary urban scholar such as Dr. Umar Johnson, who would profess, I would say, that they are along the lines of the Garvey tradition, the Pan-African tradition. And then you have others who say, well, we would embrace some of the work that Barack Obama has done, seeing him as the birth child of the results, painstaking hard work of the civil rights movement. But the camps around each of them are at war, right? But both camps are hearkening to one or two of the same legendary, figures that you mentioned that we all should go back to learn from. How do you address that? Because that's an impediment of unity in a sense. And while each of them are hearkening back to the past, but they're looking at our Black past very differently. And do you see that as something, maybe to get a little philosophical, maybe that's a necessary process, a Hegelian process where we have these conflicts and we will soon merge and find some nexus where we sort of combine?
Yeah, I mean, I think move forward, you're going to have to find some common ground, with those, who you have to live among and live with. So the idea is that we can't be fighting each other. I think, to me, that's the most important part. We're going to have to find a way to get that. That's politics. You get some things that you fight for, and you hold some things until next time, until you get back to the table the next time. Some things you put on the back burner, but you get to it eventually. I think we can do both and I think we're capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. And some Black people's skill and talent, lies in science and tech. Some people, skills and talent lie in finance and in healthcare and so forth. So, I mean, we don't have to be monolithic. We don't have to put all our eggs in one basket. We, I think, have the kind of comprehensive, holistic, pool of talent and gifts that could, if we really sit down and discuss, how we're going to proceed in progress, knowing that, we don't have to, emulate, white supremacy to make progress. There's a thing called compassionate capitalism, where you make a profit, but you don't, crush people in the process of doing so, and everybody could benefit. So when we think about, how right-wing conservatism and what their philosophy is and what their connection is to, believing that capitalism is the best form of economic organization for a society. This is how you connect, government, and money with power. This is how you do it. And liberals and people who are in the middle of the spectrum who think that we should govern from the center right, center left. But then people who tend to be more at the left, thinking that democratic socialism may be best. That capitalism has created massive amounts of wealth and money, but we still have abysmal rates of homelessness and poverty and suffering among people who are marginalized in society, and concentrations of wealth among the top 1%, which is just insane. It's outrageous. And so I think that instead of us saying we're trying to get rich and we're trying to get dollars, and that we somehow emulate a model, our version of economics, after oppressive capitalism, particularly white capitalism that is rooted in white supremacy. So we're going to have to go back and look and not don't feel like we have to reinvent the wheel, because that's burdensome. You don't have to try to figure out how to move cargo from point A to point B on your backs. You have wheels to help with that. And all other kind of tools and technology that are moving us forward. And we're smarter than we were 100 years ago. I would hope we're smarter than we were 200 years ago. But sometimes we can't let their smartness spell out destruction either. We have to be wise about what this modern living affords us, the benefits that it affords us. So because if the planet's not going to survive, global warming and climate change is not going to matter anyway for anybody. Black, white, green, or yellow, it doesn't matter if we don't think about how we're gonna, save the planet. We're in critical times. So, some things, about race, some things about, are not about race so much, and we need to. I think we can smartly discern, where we need to focus our attention. I like that slide that you showed, Dr. Stafford, with the inventions. We've always been the genius, in so many areas, the cultural genius, the scientific genius, we've been the genius for, centuries, calculus, monotheism, all of that. We've been the genius, and we've been the saviors. Derek Bell talks about that. Dr. Johnson, with faces at the bottom of the well. White folks have always looked to black folks to save them from, their, craziness. And once they've, gotten back on their feet, we're kicked back to the curb. So go figure. I don't know if I answered your question, but and you're on mute. Am I on mute? I don't hear you, Dr. Henry. I don't hear you.
I guess he's trying to figure it out.
Okay. I don't know. Was I being heard?
No, we heard you.
We heard you. We heard you. We absolutely heard you. Maybe Dr. Johnson, you want to respond? Just
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, sure. Is it okay if I respond, Dr. Henry, while you figure this out? Yeah, he shook his head. So yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, I think Black progress will truly start when we actually have self-love, and we talked about this previously. Colorism, skin bleaching. We really can't be. We really can't move forward if we actually don't love each other, right? And I think that is the greatest disdain of Black people, is that we don't have any unity amongst ourselves, because once we're strong together, it's hard to overcome us. But as soon as we have domestic warfare, right? And actually that's how the slave trade actually started. I don't know if you know about two particular dynamics. First, the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885.
Right, they cut up Africa.
They cut up Africa, right, and marked the climax of European competition for territory in Africa. And it's called, AKA, otherwise known as the Scramble for Africa. Well, why is that? Because all of the great kingdoms we had previously, we were fighting amongst ourselves. And we had a lot of civil and domestic warfare. And of course, that was a perfect time for you to go in and obviously occupy territory, because when is a country most vulnerable? When you're at war with somebody else. And we were at war with each other, right? And so many times, even till this day, we're at war with each other. In the Caribbean, Jamaicans at war with, Haitians, and Haitians at war with this Black group. Even though Blackness is not monolithic, right? There's a diversity in Blackness. Sometimes I think we use our diversity to go against each other. It's kind of like a weird dichotomy, if you will, right?
A divide and conquer kind of strategy.
Exactly. And how can we go and divide and conquer, and we divide and conquer ourselves? Well, no, that doesn't work, right? So there has to be a unity. And because of that, for example, one of the most infamous slave traders was not a white person. One of the most infamous, and there's unfortunately a long list, were African people who sold their own brothers and sisters, right, from different tribes. So I don't know if you ever heard of Tipu Tip, Tippu, last name Tip. That's his nickname. He actually has very long Islamic name, so I didn't want to say it, but the nickname is Tipu Tip, who actually sold Africans and made was very wealthy off of that. But in many ways, even till this day, we sell ourselves, right? So in order for Black progress to actually happen, we need unity, right? And embrace our diversity and embrace the different hues of skin that we have, rather than ostracize each other, because we'll never actually progress until we actually have self-love and unity amongst ourselves. That is a foundational point. The second, I think, also is important is financial literacy. I talked about this briefly. Also, Dr. Lightfoot and Dr. Stafford talked about it. But the reason why there's such a huge wealth gap is because we were ostracized out of the home ownership system for decades, right? So white folks actually had access to that equity. That was their nest egg to send their kids to college debt-free. That was their nest egg for retirement. And when they passed that along to previous or succeeding rather generations. Black folks didn't have that opportunity. So one of the main drivers of wealth inequality is because of lack of home ownership. So now, as part of this, including teaching, of course, your transparent history, which I alluded to earlier, we need to teach about financial literacy. We need to talk about home ownership. We need to talk about investing, right? We need to talk about college saving plans. So as soon as you have a child, you could put little money in. So when that child turns 18, they could go to school relatively debt-free, if not debt-free, right? So there's many financial tools at our disposal, but we don't actually teach about that. We teach about, and I believe Dr. Lightfoot talked about it earlier, and also Dr. Stafford, consumerism, right? We just want to consume, and not actually save, right? And live rich and die broke, which is, in my opinion, it's a sin, right? We're not supposed to live rich and die broke. You're supposed to, of course, live modestly in your means, but also have something to pass on to the next generation, right? Because it's a good starting point from them.
And I want to jump in a little bit there, just to because I do have some questions for you all, and based on what you said. And thanks for continuing, Dr. Lightfoot. What I was saying, the battery for this microphone had died. Not only did you answer the question, but you were encroaching on some other questions that I wanted to ask Dr. Johnson and Dr. Stafford. So I wanted to get that in. So right where you were, though, Dr. Johnson, you raised another point with the African slave trade and the role that Africans played. And I will come back to that one, but that's an interesting issue there. But let me start from the beginning first. So you had brought up critical race theory.
Yeah.
All right. And it seems that critical race theory for you, I believe in the context of Black progress, is that critical race theory put the flashlight on the mechanisms of racism in the law, in the justice, in the legal territories, right? In places where we wouldn't look or don't have access to see, as opposed to in the public where, during the early 1900s, you can see the Ku Klux Klan, you can see the colors only signs, right? But what critical race theory is, unveiled those very same sort of actors with suits and ties in office, right? And in that sense, you made the claim that education is progress, right? And you also make the claim that much of the obstacle, and I could be wrong, correct me, to Black progress is ignorance, in certain respects, like not understanding the importance of healthcare. And so there is something implied in that, and I want to ask you if this is the case, because we've had, as Dr. Lightfoot delineated, a Black intelligentsia, Black organizations that were on deck. But it wasn't as easy as knowing. It wasn't so simple just to have education and things will change, right? And which is why, an answer to my own question, there were various approaches to Black progress. Maybe we should leave. Maybe we should try electoral politics. Maybe we should stay and do community activism. But in this case, there seems to me, in what you presented, that implicitly you agree that, or may not, that things have changed enough in American society so that all we need to do is now reacquaint ourselves to just understand the processes, to understand the opportunities, and once we are enlightened, we can just carry out whatever steps that need to be taken without resistance.
No, I didn't mean, and thank you for clarifying that. I didn't mean it in the sense of passivity. I think that we, of course, still need to be active and still need to have advocacy. But I think while we're having advocacy, the educational piece is important. And this is specifically towards the younger generation who wants to take the bull by the horns, but don't have the full understanding of our history, as Dr. Lightfoot talked about. It's important to it's important to have the vigor and the tenacity and the vivaciousness, and to move forward and to protest and do all these great things, right? Like our ancestors did. But the undergirding of that is knowing what you know, right? Having that history, having that education. And a lot of young people, unfortunately, do not because, it's been censored, right? I know, for example, Black institutions like the Black Church, but many other Black institutions took that role of Black history to adequately teach it, right? Some of that, unfortunately, has strayed away with some of the current Black churches we have because it's for various amount of reasons, right? But again, what I'm saying to clarify is that we need education, but not passively speaking. So, right, we need to have, it's not either or, it's both and. That was what I was trying to allude to earlier. So hopefully I'm more clear in that now.
No, I mean, yeah, and I'm just teasing out, because this is something very serious. Here's how I'm thinking. I get into these conversations with the boys in the crew, the girls on the block, and we talk. And a lot of what we say at the theoretical level, and we need to, read Du Bois's work, and we need to look at what Marcus Garvey is saying and understand healthcare. But the way it trickles down, it can trickle down in ways that the context is missing, or we're not quite sure how to. It's like a Rubik's Cube. We have all the figures, we have all the information, but how do we align it? And so I'm kind of trying to tease out questions with that. And so let me go. You brought up white comfort, one of the issues of white comfort, and that's interesting because you started off with Derek Bell, the grandfather of critical race theory, and one of his issues was that things wouldn't move forward for Black people unless there was something that white people can get out of it. So it was an interest convergence sort of idea, and so that if there was going to be a law passed somehow, some way, it has to be beneficial to the white majority. And so in the case of education, and I understand that you clarified it's not being passive. In what way does education work as a mechanism for progress in the face of white discomfort, which we're seeing now, right? We're seeing the erasure of critical race theory and the encroaching on other aspects of Black education. So the very thing that we should grab, the very tool, to use Dr. Lightfoot's word, that we should hold on to is being either locked away or taken away from us. How do you speak to that, to someone listening to this and saying, well, what is the point of going to school now? What do you mean by do we get education from the school? Dr. Lightfoot said, Carter G. Woodson said there's a miseducation. If you go to school, you're going to be miseducated if you come back home into the hood. So, or wherever you are, right? How do you speak to that as, as yielding education as a dominant vehicle or weapon for Black progress?
Yeah, well, in order to get it back, we need to actively, aggressively get it back through, number one, being involved in every element of our local school educational districts, right? Parents need to be involved in their school's education. And not to say that all parents aren't, but being an educator and actually being individuals that I know in the K through 12 system, a lot of parents aren't, right? Who are making the decisions at the local level, right? Are you voting at the local level, right? For individuals that have your children's best interests at heart, right? Are you going to vote for principles that will actually encourage the dynamics of inclusive curriculum, right? So I know voting is an active dynamic, right? And of course, voting is also complex because we're dealing with issues of voter suppression, even harder so in some states than others. We're dealing with gentrification, right? I was up in Harlem the other day and I'm like seeing Starbucks and all these other, like what's going on, right? But these are realities. We're also dealing with gerrymandering, the redrawing of voting maps, right? So there's many different tools of, tricks of the trade to try to maintain the statuses of the education system, right? And we have to be methodical and multilateral in actually trying to alleviate these particular tools that continue to maintain that ignorance, right? A more direct way is, for example, folks at Seton Hall University in South Orange, New Jersey. They were getting ready to dramatically diminish the Africana or African American Studies program. And the Black students was like, hell no. And they protested and blocked traffic and raised hell, right? And guess what? There are 3 tenure track. I think one is tenure track, but also 2 other professorial positions in that department, which they haven't had in like at least 10 years, right? So we have to use the old tactics that our ancestors used, right? When, like, Ruby Bridges, right? And all of the other, the Hard Rock, oh my goodness, it's slipping my head now. Integrating high schools and colleges, right?
Right.
And I don't know why it's slipping in my head, but using those particular tactics against white comfort, right? Against white fragility, and say, we don't care how you feel. We're going to be on the front lines for change. That we are included, not just to be in the building, but also to learn more about ourselves, right? So that's one dynamic, right? But it shouldn't also be the only dynamic as well. Self-education is also important. But since you're paying tax dollars, whether you like it or not, or whether you have children in school or not, you should also be involved in what is being taught in the curriculum as well, right? So these are different approaches to look into being an advocate in the public school system and trying to say, hey, we have a voice too, we have a history, and we need to actually acknowledge that and forget about what other people feel, right? These are actual things that happen, and these are things that are still going on within our community, and you need to learn about it whether you like it or not, right? And we shouldn't ban books. We shouldn't do any of those particular things. If you don't want to read it, okay, you don't have to have your child read the book, but that doesn't necessarily mean the book should be completely banned because you're uncomfortable that your child might even have the potential of reading a true, authentic history, right? So these are different things that come to mind when I look into education and having a much more clearer, transparent voice when it comes to our history.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. I would like to add, while I go to Dr. Stafford, that I've accumulated a lot more to bring to the questions towards your presentation, Dr. Stafford. So, Dr. Stafford, you outline a very impressive blueprint and structure for Black progress in terms of like, how does it look? More than addressing the causes, you gave us what does it look like? You actually addressed that, and in a very detailed way, from owning businesses and looking to make global connections and respecting ourselves, being consistent and sustainability. And I would like to pose an issue that Dr. Johnson brought up, and he mentioned, and I wrote it out just for you. In fact, it hijacked my initial question. What do you recommend Black people do to attain this paradigm of Black progress that you outline in the midst of the tricks of the trade, such as gerrymandering and undermining education and all of these things? What do you suggest? How do we do that? How do we get sustainability when voting rights are being clipped away little by little? How do we, stay politically active, or understand how politics work when more and more, many of our youth are becoming disenchanted with education because they see, Black studies programs are being taken away in certain universities.
Right. So it kind of goes back into your initial question to Dr. Lightfoot about meeting of the different minds, right? And so when I think of meeting of the different minds, I'm thinking meeting of the different barriers that we may have in place. And so I think it's important to know that our previous Black leaders and current Black leaders, they all have the same goal, but like a different maybe strategy, and it represents all of us. And so, how do we go about doing that? Looking at the goal through everyone's lens, uniting, being consistent, but more importantly, and I tell my students this all the time, money. Follow the money. The black dollar, I keep talking about it, it has to continue to circulate in our community. We have to be united. We can't be divided. We are all shades, right? Just because we're all shades doesn't mean that we can't all get along, right? Because we have difference of opinions, it doesn't mean that we can't be working towards the same goal. And so it's very simple. It's having conversation and then following through with action. I have to focus on the Black Panther Party, right? And so, like, as a little girl, I just remember learning about the Black Panther Party, and my grandmother was a part of contributing and donating. And so there are just so many avenues. If that would have remained, right, the powers that be found a way to destroy it. Why didn't we continue it? Why not? What happened? Where was the divide? And so I think that it goes back to the dollar circulating it in our community. The Jewish community, their dollar almost never leaves their community. What roles do they have in corporations? What roles do they have in academia? They're creating businesses. They're creating generational wealth. They're telling the story of their ancestors, and they're not getting it wrong, but they're also in political seats, either financially or physically, that can carry on their mission and carry on the goal of their culture. And so why are we not doing that? And then most importantly, let's not say we're not doing it, we're not being consistent enough, right? So we can show up for a party, right? We can show up for the Jordans, but why are we not showing up like right now? We should be at every kind of conversation. If my cousin is running for office, everyone should be there, right? No matter what, whether Jordans are being given out or not. I hate to kind of refer to this, but August 5th, right? We were so united, right? But we were united. It was great. Let's keep that momentum going. Let's keep it pushing, right? And let's put it in even more productive ways to solidify our wealth. And so I think that we have what it takes to progress as one. I think that we have to just be consistent in that. And I think it needs to be overwhelmingly stated. Like, we're going to have a difference of opinions. It's kind of like what you say at work, right? We can fight behind closed doors. In front of everyone, we're united. If you said yes and I said no in the back, you said yes on camera, it's yes. And so it's simple. Like, I don't think this is brain surgery. Also, what also comes to mind is our Black families, right? Our Black homes. There was a time, I'm probably dating myself. There was a time where you could not walk down the block. So let's say you did something terrible at school, or you did something terrible in the street. By the time you got home, everybody called your mama. Everybody, right? So it took a village to raise a child. And I am a representation of my village. I'm not necessarily saying that doesn't happen now. I don't know, but I just know that, like, I knew my mother was everywhere. Now, was she physically everywhere? No, but her eyes and her ears, because Miss Johnson, Mrs. Lightfoot, Grandma, this person, they knew me. Oh, that's Gail's child, right? And, oh, let me call Gail. You know, they would feed me, clothe me, and it wasn't a problem. In school, if you cut up, you got cut up, right? And it was like, not saying like promoting, abuse, but it's just like, there was a sense of community, and it was in everywhere, the church, the school, at work, walking down the block. I remember crossing the street as a child. Someone on the corner would watch for me. You didn't have to actually be related to me. So again, so what does this look like? What do we need to do? Be consistent, be clear about what our goals are, be intentional. But I really want to focus on the Black community and money. Like, we can't do anything without money. And we should be making those connections globally. I should be able to go to another country, and whether they're my cousin or not, they should be able to host me or guide me or point me in the right direction. I should be able to go to another state without a doubt and be able to be supported and do whatever it is that I need to do. If you know that I'm trying to create a business, oh, I may know someone that may know someone that may know someone. If we should be connecting, networking is everything. And all it takes is to pass an email, a phone number. Hi, how you doing? So it's simple. But we also should be talking about, and maybe this could be another forum, black families. Black families.
Mm.
It's important. We cannot talk about progress without talking about black families. We can't about the structure, what that looks like. Black
Uh-oh.
love. I mean, it's trending and it's trending in
Mm.
America. See, for me, I always knew it exists. I have godparents that have been married over 30 years. I knew and I know black love exists. America just found out. No, we are dynamic. We know it. We just have to believe in it, be consistent, and move it forward. That's all I got.
Wow, no, that's a lot there. And as I did the others, I want to follow up. And again, I need to unpack this because there's so much juice in all that you say. And I'm learning a lot here. So if y'all want to quiz me on what y'all said, I'm ready for that test next week. All right. I got my notes here. So consistency, money, and black politics, and black economics. All right. Now, sometimes, we're often compared or contrasted with other groups such as the Jewish community, Irish, and others. Um, and I think, as you all, particularly Dr. Johnson, reminded us that there are certain disadvantages and advantages that certain groups have, right? And in terms of it, say, some people say, oh, we should be more like the Jews, but Jews have been adopted as a member of the larger white community, right? And they get passes that will get them through redlining in a way that black people who wanted to invest in their own community could not have. And that's part of the interruption of our economic growth. And historically, if we follow Dr. Lightfoot's advice and look in the past, Black Wall Street, we've always been economically minded, but back then we had to face some harsh backlashes, brutal, physical, violent backlashes, right? So my question to you is the black economics, how does that look like for a group that in many ways, as Dr. Johnson brought out, is still facing systemic racism, institutional racism, right? And not just in the political sphere, but in the economic sphere. Is it an issue? And maybe I'm wrong about this. Is this issue more of an external problem for us, or is it solely internal? In that we are all we need, we have all we need right now, and the issue is perhaps planning and being consistent with that plan, like you're saying. If we have a group of people here listening or in the future and saying, listen, we got a few dollars, what do we do? How does this work? You have certain families who feel like, well, I don't have enough to save and invest because I'm living paycheck to paycheck. The economy is up and down. When there's a recession, black people catch the flu. It's a depression for us. And if there's a depression, then it's just like bankruptcy for many in the black community. What are some ideas you have on that? And this will be a round table if you want to jump in, and this will actually finalize our last round of questions. But I want to lead with Dr. Michele Stafford on this.
So I do think that, well, first I want to say, as a woman of color, I in no form or fashion compare us to other cultures. Like, we are great, we are amazing, and everyone is trying to be like us. So let me be all the way clear about that, right? I think we do have our resources. I think we maybe just be a little bit more cognizant on how we're utilizing them. We need to hold each other accountable behind closed doors and be united. And when I'm thinking about this question, Robert Smith is a billionaire. Tyler Perry, right? And I'm saying these big names because I need people to know, like, it is happening, right? We need to build and continue to support. So I'll use a very small example. I support Tyler Perry, right? And so I said earlier, I opened up, I'm rooting for everything and everyone Black. I've heard people say, well, I don't like his film and I don't like the contact and I can't relate. Guess what? It doesn't matter. He Black. I'm voting for him. I'm rooting for him. I'm donating for him, right? And so this is why I say, and this is definitely my opinion, that I believe we have the resources. We just need to use them properly. Robert Smith paying off people's loans, right? You know, creating internships. We have it. It's just understanding our resources, utilizing them, being strategic, and consistent, right? I think it's like, let's take it off of color, racism, but let's take it off of all of this stuff, right? Let's stop talking about progress. When everybody wants to lose weight, what happens? Be consistent, eat clean, eat right, stick to this regimen, keep it moving. And so, like, there isn't this grand plan or grand idea other than, let's start with 5 goals. What are those steps to get to those goals? Be consistent in it. Hold each other accountable. If my brother falls, help my brother get up. If my sister falls, help my sister get up, and then continue that. And so I'll turn it over to the other panelists. I don't want to take up too much time.
Thank you for that. As we move forward to the next few, the next panelists, I'm thinking, I just want to tell all of you so far that this has been a thriving discussion, very insightful. I think there's a lot of political soul food for thought for people to come back to over and over. And I want to get that out the way. I want to thank everyone who has been listening for all this long, for this time. We had a very, consistent crowd here. And for those of you who have been participating, thank you very much. So let's just move, I guess, to, if you can recap your thoughts on Black progress, sort of like in a minute or two, and leave us with a word of advice as to how to implement Black progress, that would be great. And then we can end on that note, on some actionable steps or tips to think about. And we'll start with Dr. Lightfoot, and then go to Dr. Johnson and back to Dr. Stafford, and we'll end.
Of course, thank you. And I've learned a lot here. I appreciate the invitation. As far as actionable items and advice, I think included in my opening, I think commentary, and that's the whole idea of really focusing on Black health in a very holistic way, mental, physical, and our spiritual health, and paint that with a broad brush, and brings us to self-love and loving each other. I think that's what the community is all about. That's what you're saying, Dr. Stafford. I'm hearing you loud and clear. Being about community. We have to know that love is the key, and it won't happen without that. So we can stop killing each other and stop beating up on each other, and believe that we can reclaim some measure of greatness of who we are as a people, and know that the world looks to us, for their soul. We're the soul of the universe, I would say. We're soul people, and I think we're God's chosen people. So I think we need to walk in that royalness, and wear our crown, and walk tall, and you said, eat right, pray,
Eat, pray, love.
learn, live, love. So there you go. Those are actionable items. It's hard not to do that if you have a good mind to want to make progress, and be grateful for every day that you become part of the Wake Up Club.
Thank you on that. Thank you very much. Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, I think goes back to, of course, educating ourselves, but also challenging any institution that tries to diminish not just our past history and our past accomplishments, but our accomplishments now, and learning about the movers and shakers, like Dr. Stafford mentioned, Robert Smith, Tyler Perry, and so many others, supporting them, also learning more about them, learning from them, but also, and in many ways, connecting with them as well. So it's multifaceted in regards to educating ourselves. But when we do that, we know where we're going, because as Dr. Lightfoot said before, if you don't know your past, if you don't have that education, you don't know where you're going and moving forward. So I think those dynamics are really important. Education, self-education in the past, but also learning what's going on in the future. And again, challenging anyone in any institution that tries to diminish our voices, diminish our accomplishments, and tries to erase what we've worked so very damn hard for, to be honest with you. I think those are important keys to leave here in our discussion today.
Thank you so much for that wisdom. Dr. Michele Stafford, the floor is yours.
Awesome. So as I kind of opened up earlier, the takeaway for me is always boycott accordingly. I'm a bit of a rebel, but Black progress should be less of a conversation and definitely more action. Again, strategically utilizing our resources to circulate the Black dollar in our community, creating and fostering generational wealth while creating a safe space for our youth and opportunities for us to really thrive. And the one thing I will add to that is also like loving on our Black families, supporting our Black families, and understanding what that structure looks like. And so, with that said, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform. And thank you for wonderful co panelists. Very insightful contribution to this discussion.
Thank you. Well, everyone who tuned in, thank you very much for listening and chiming in the chat. Uh, I I hope you, like I did, got a lot out of this discussion and taking some notes. I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your time and your mind. Um, you all are amazing in what you have imparted, and also from just it's coming from a place of love, not just a place of education. I mean, they could be one and the same, but it's one thing just to give somebody advice and knowledge, but it's something to give that information to people because you want the best for them. And that was received from your spirits and the way that you prepared for this and all that you shared. All of you are professionals at what you do, and you've taken your skill set, your doctoral skill sets and research, and you shared it here with the community. So I thank you and applaud you and wish you all the best. To those of you who enjoyed this, you can support this forum. I would like to continue this at least once a month with like-minded individuals, and be assured to all of you, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Lightfoot, Dr. Stafford, I will be asking you back to talk more on some other juicy topics. And if there's anything that you have going on that I can do to help promote, feel free to let me know. If you have something that you want to do online on the platform, don't hesitate. And right before we go, I know all of you have to go. Dr. Johnson, I don't know if any of it others have any books that you've written. I know Dr. Johnson from school, Drew. We went to graduate school together. He's an author, all right, prolific author. I want to bring you back on one more time to maybe talk about or give us a notice of the books that you have going on.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I actually have one right in front of me. If you don't mind me just having a quick spin.
Just.
So this is called the Anti-Racism Resource Guide, Volume 1, Supporting Black Businesses and Economics. So basically, this is a modern-day version of the Green Book, where I have Black businesses, Black banks, Black credit unions, many of the things that Dr. Stafford was talking about. Our research to see legitimate FDIC-insured institutions that are Black-owned, amongst many other different Black-owned businesses, and it's only for $20. It's 50 pages of black, pure blackness, and it's only $20 on Amazon. So if you want, I could put the link. Actually, I think I did send a link for you here, but I could just repost it. So folks are interested in supporting Black-owned businesses. This is a good resource for y'all to have. So here it is. I think I put it in the chat, and feel free.
Yeah, put it in the chat. Okay, awesome.
Oh, hold it up again. I'm sorry. They asked me to hold it up again. There you go.
So while you're holding it up, Dr. Johnson, make sure we connect offline and I'll promote it on my business page. So see, rooting and supporting everything Black.
That's what's up, y'all.
Hopefully,
I'm gonna put the book in the chat. The link is in the chat now. Okay, you put it up there already, so good. Perfect. So thanks once again, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the third Political Soul Food Podcast. We out here making it happen. We can continue this discussion in the future. Thanks again to everybody. And it's time to say goodbye.
Peace, love, and soul.
Peace, love, and soul, y'all.
I feel like we should do the Soul Train line going out.
No doubt. So we out of here. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. This was another successful event. Really happy. Turned out pretty good. Hope all of you got something out of this. We will be back for more. Let's make this happen. Let's make Black progress happen. All right. Peace and love, everybody.